Hello, I'm Martijn Graat and this is Does Logistics Matter? A podcast on trends and innovations in supply chain and logistics. Answering yes to the question today is Pieter Kinds, founder and CEO of Freightender. On this episode, we talk about the digitalization of logistics and the effect it has on transportation companies, shippers and forwarders. Please enjoy my conversation with Pieter Kinds. Hi, Pieter. Welcome to the show. I always start with the same question. Does logistics matter?
Absolutely. Now more than ever.
I was hoping for that answer. You are in the right show. So, Pieter, what I'm seeing is a move towards digitization or digitalization in supply chain and logistics. Are you seeing the same trend?
Yes, absolutely. We see that there's this very strong increase and interest in digital products, in doing things online via SaaS-based tools and platforms. That is growing very strongly.
Yeah, it's traditionally, I think the logistics industry is definitely not a first mover. In a lot of ways, they follow other industries that are much more forward in their thinking and in what they're trying. A lot of startups are trying to be, and then you hear the next Amazon or the next Airbnb or the next Uber. How do you see that?
Well, there's definitely a lot of disruption on paper, but in practice it's very different because you may have a great idea, you may have the right technology, but it doesn't mean that you can sell it very fast and that you can implement it right away with a lot of customers. It still takes the adoption within the logistics departments, and there they suffer from a I would say a problem that they have for a very long time. That logistics has been commoditized. It always should cost less. It's only a small part of the total budget. No budgets are made available for new investments. It sits at the end of the chain, so there's not much strategic focus on it. And that, of course, is now changing. But still, it takes more than only, let's say, a situation or economical changes. It also takes internal change of the minds of the people that are responsible for the direction of a company, the strategic direction. And for me, logistics is really part of a direct category, and not as many companies quantify it as an indirect category in procurement, for example.
With indirect cost, you mean?
Yeah.
So digitization is speeding up different parts of the supply chain. What processes would you say are specifically suitable to digitalize?
I think it's for sure the way companies communicate with each other. When you look at freight, data is often quite poorly organized, is often not fully available. So the way people exchange data is a very important part of making logistics more efficient, of how companies work together. But it also means that more things, let's say in customs or delivering certain documentation, but also in logistics procurement, need to move away from just Excel and email to a platform where you can do things automatically and in a collaborative fashion between shippers and carriers. There's a big opportunity for that.
When I'm reading about this, and what I'm seeing is that it's logistics companies are becoming data companies, but one of the problems is that each company has their own way of producing data. So there are not yet many standards in how all these digital systems could communicate. Do you see solutions for that?
Actually, I don't. It's very hard to standardize the data in the industry, although you could certainly identify a certain set of data that is that can be very much structured. But the problem is that you are working with different modes of transportation. You're working with a lot of different companies, and you're working with a lot of different countries and regulations and so on. And that makes it all very difficult to standardize that. And there are no platforms, let's say, that facilitate the exchange of data in the way it's required. And I think nobody can really answer that question today to say, yeah, well, there's one platform like Amazon is a very dominating platform in consumerism, but there's not such a thing in B2B logistics. It's very hard to do. And there are so many complexities in logistics. And next to that, they are changing all the time. So new regulations are being introduced, sanctions or whatever, but it changes all the time. So it's very dynamic. So basically, you're always behind the reality, and you'll always play catch up in that.
Well, it seems like a problem that's very difficult to solve. Well, it seems like a problem that's very difficult to solve. But what are you seeing? How are logistics companies organizing their data, and how are they increasing the quality of their data?
To be honest, I think it's a very slow process. What you've seen over the years, that you had the ERP implementations in the late 80s, 90s for sure, 2000s, and then came the TMS implementations. But these were standalone applications, so really separated from suppliers and from other parts in the organization. So in essence, data is still scattered around, and ERPs are not always used everywhere in the organization. And the same for the TMS side of things. So nowadays, you see that a lot of companies pop up that address more specific needs and that are also able to integrate much easier with each other. But surprisingly, when we look at our company, Freightender, when we receive data for a tender, it is often very poor data. The information is not correct, it's lacking, it's missing, it's wrong, because people are not able to pull that data because it doesn't come from one system. So I've worked for a long time in freight audit, for example, and in freight audit, we always needed to have the information. It was very hard to get the right contracts and everything. But once you establish the process, you get information from invoices. Now that's a true logistics data because it has been agreed to be paid. So that data is very useful as a starting point for a tender that you can run. So once you have that in place, once you have structured data, then you can also much easier run a tender. And you see that a lot of companies do not get that concept of the full chain because the data starts somewhere. And if you are running a tender and you have to take data from this system, from that system, and you make some guesstimates and so on, then eventually you can also not run a good tender. So you need to have the whole chain of data needs to be correct. And that means that you need to have different systems in place to ensure that that data is easily available and can be easily loaded into the next system that you're going to use. Otherwise, you have poor data. You probably pay the wrong amounts, and you're going to run a poor tender where you do not get the maximum value out of that tender. So, and everything will be bad beyond that because you can build dashboards all you want, but eventually those dashboards will not be telling the true story because the underlying data will not be correct.
Yeah, the garbage in, garbage out system. So you're seeing a need for logistics companies to get more educated on the approach to data.
Yeah, I think it's basically learning by doing or learning the hard way, and especially now when we see that logistics is so dynamic that you need to be on top of your game. You need to have the systems. You need to be able to pull data, to have visibility. That's why companies like Shipio or Project 44 are doing very well because real-time visibility is a big thing at the moment. People want to see where the trucks are at, where the shipments are, want to understand estimated time of arrivals and so on. So you see that right now it's really a pressure cooker that people are scrambling for digital tools because they need to have the visibility, they need to have the structured data in order to do something with that in their own organization. Because now more than ever, logistics is affecting the whole supply chain. And that's what we have seen with supermarkets closing and everything. It's so important that logistics is able to flow all the time. And it has never affected more sales and everything else in the organization if logistics is not functioning. So that's why you need to upgrade your logistics. And that's what a lot of shippers should be doing at the moment.
And with upgrading your logistics, you are also talking. Are you talking about the way the logistics is organized internally, or are you also talking about increasing the quality of the logistics that you are procuring?
Yeah, so it's really a holistic approach that you need to have. So it's what we see is that it is the tech landscape that you would deploy for logistics. That is something that you would need to address in order to make it work. But of course, to procure logistics is really the basis for your further logistics process. If you source the wrong providers, if you have the wrong partnerships, your logistics processes will suffer from that. So to have a good process to procure logistics services is very key, and that's what everybody should be thinking about.
What are the main benefits if you digitize this procurement process?
So there's a number of things. So first of all, I would say that you save time because you automate a lot of work that is manual at the moment. So for example, if you invite 30 carriers to a tender, you need to send it out via email, an Excel file, and then you receive, let's say in the best case scenario, you receive 30 Excel files back. You need to upload them, but you also need to check those files. Is everything correct? Is it still the same format as that I sent it? And then you think, oh, I forgot to put in some data, and I need to send some more lanes to these carriers. So then you have another batch of emails that you would need to check, update that to the original files, then merge everything together. That is very cumbersome. And then you need to do the analysis. So in the analysis, you need to be very skilled in Excel to be able to pull that off. So that's a lot of manual work that can absolutely be digitized and automated on a platform. Secondly, it is the visibility and the standardization. So the full visibility of what is my carrier doing during the tender process. So if you give them time for 2 or 3 weeks to fill in this tender, in the meantime, you don't see anything. Now, at the same time, if you have a platform, you see exactly what the carrier is doing, if he's busy, if he accepted to take part in the tender, and so on. And the other part is that the carriers also receive a structured data set, and they can exactly fill in the tender the way you want them to. So for carriers, it's also an improvement, because you have to realize that carriers work with so many different shippers, get a lot of tenders, and they are all in different formats, which is very tough for carriers to make sense of. It takes a lot of time for them. So they often need to make decisions. Am I going to respond to this tender, or am I going to let it go because I don't have time for it, or it's just too complex for me to analyze what is here? So you want to make it more simple for those carriers. And last but not least, if you have a good tool that does hundreds of thousands of calculations based on algorithms and so on, which you can never do by yourself, you eventually get a much better result. So our customers get, on average, about 10% more savings than when you would do a tender on a manual basis, which is an enormous amount, of course.
And when you say 10%, where is that saving? Is that in finding the right carrier, or is that also a saving in like time saved because people are not sifting through I mean, 30 Excel sheets. My mind was going, oh my God, what's how? Just if you just have to process 30 Excel sheets and then have to resend them, that's going to take so much time.
Well, that work is not even quantified, but that's just in between work that someone would do. So it's really about the end result. It's really the end result where you see that kind of saving, because you make everything visible and you're able to compare things that you were not able to compare before. Because before, if you don't have a very structured setup, carriers introduce their own costs, introduce their own way of giving you discounts and so on. And with a structured approach, that's not possible. So you come to a completely different result when you really are comparing apples to apples. So that's what a system takes care of.
What are next step developments in logistics procurement? What do you see in the future?
One thing that became very clear to us is that shippers always want to find new carriers. Shippers are always interested in finding carriers that they are not able to contact, because the ability to find right carriers is very limited. You can search on Google, you can go on LinkedIn, but it's hard to find carriers that fit your profile. At the same time, we saw that a lot of carriers are very interested in having a continuous flow of invitations to take part in tenders. And a lot of platforms in the industry are focused at digital forwarding, digital brokerages, and digital spot bidding platforms. So really focus at a shipment, at a transactional level, but actually bringing together the carriers and the shippers for them to see each other, and creating a logistics community platform where, based on different parameters, based on profiles and automated suggestions, automated searches and so on, they can find the right carriers, and carriers can find the right tenders and grow their business. That is something that we see as a really growing area, and which is not there yet in the market. So it's something unique, and that's what we have been working on lately.
Okay, and so this is about the buyers of logistics being able to be sure that the right companies are responding, that these companies have certain certificates or have specific equipment that is needed for the transportation. And I guess then the same goes for the transportation companies. They only get invited to bids that actually match the size of their company, the geography that they're most active in, the equipment that they have.
Yeah, so for example, you can be a very small company in the Czech Republic, for example. You have 10 trucks, and because you're so small, your sales and marketing capabilities are also limited. So you may find only customers in your direct area, but at the same time, you may be working as a niche carrier, and you have a very good product that you offer, but you're not able to attract more customers that maybe have shipments that pass through your area, or that would also like to get in touch with you. It's impossible to match that because buyers don't have time to find carriers, and the small carrier just don't have that capability to do so.
They don't have the capability to be found, because you need a presence somewhere to be found. And usually, I think even these smaller companies, most are not even on the internet. And if they are there, it's hard to look at a website and know what specific type of service or what the factors are that are relevant.
Yes, we should realize that there's an enormous amount of carriers in Europe, in different countries that all have their strong and weak points, and it's impossible to understand where they are, and it's impossible to just start a search on your own. So that's definitely an outcome for both parties, we believe. So when you're creating a platform, it's important for shippers to say, okay, we are going to invite our current carriers, and carriers are able to then see those tenders of those shippers. So it's really the work of in a logistics community. The members are responsible for the community itself. So we really want to stimulate that they have both a big presence on the platform, because that increases the value for both parties.
What do you mean when you say big presence?
To be more specific, we want a lot of shippers to be part of the platform, because the more shippers are on the platform, the more carriers are attracted to the platform to see more tenders. Now, we have been talking to different companies, and they ask, okay, do you have will you have carriers in Morocco? I said, yes, we will, but I cannot guarantee how many, and I cannot. But in order to have that, I also need to have tenders there. So we are very interested to grow the business, but we cannot grow it everywhere right away, because you need to balance it out. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg story.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Yeah, you're running a chicken and egg company. Yeah.
Yes. But that's a very interesting concept. That's a very interesting concept, because it also means that if you do well, if you're able to attract those parties, you will also attract the other parties. So you get a very interesting dynamic going on once that is happening.
Is there a trend in that you see periods where more carriers are joining, or then the times change and more shippers join? Or
no, this is the exciting thing about it. So this is what we're talking about. This is development that we have been working on for the last year, and we are soon to go live by April of 21. And what is important here is that a lot of carriers see an interest in it, not only to find new carriers, but also to manage carriers. Because when you look at it, carrier management, there's not such a tool for that. To manage carriers, to keep a database of active carriers with all the information about how they work for you, what their history is, some specifics. It's just not available. So a lot of companies are interested in that. And at the same time, for carriers, what you see there is that there is no way to find really tenders other than to go to the spot platforms nowadays.
That carrier database, is that something that you are building into the Freightender tool?
It is a spin-off of Freightender, so the idea definitely comes out of Freightender, because we have seen the real-life questions from both shippers and carriers. But it's a completely separate company, and it's called Tendrex, and so, which means tender exchange. So we want shippers to exchange their tenders, but it's in all. So we call it the logistics community platform, but it's carrier management for shippers, and it's opportunity management for carriers.
It sounds like you're developing LinkedIn for logistics.
Yeah, that's a very good way of describing it. It's really meant to find new relationships. So it is non-transactional, if you know what I mean. So it's not focused at doing one shipment or finding a shipment. It's finding the right partnerships. We want to stimulate finding more business and meaningful partnerships within logistics.
Okay, so Pieter, how does a platform like a Tendrex fit into the way the carriers are selling their product and the shippers are buying that product?
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. So with Tendrex, we definitely want to make a big change in that, and we want to, of course, digitize the sales process, because what you see nowadays, there's a big discrepancy in how buyers view the way they deal with carriers, shippers, and how carriers see how they need or want to sell their logistic services. So carriers are very much focused at the personal relationship, face-to-face business. But when business is growing more international, it's more globalized, it's more online, it's going faster, it's more dynamic, then and we travel less. There's frankly not much option anymore to do the face-to-face meetings. So you need to go digital. And many carriers are not ready for that. They are not ready yet mentally, because they think the relationship is very important. And at the same time, when you look at a carrier website, it's often quite shocking how outdated a website is. And to figure out, okay, what is this carrier doing? How can we work with them? It's almost impossible to do that in 5 minutes. So carriers really need to up their game in order to be more present online, to have a better, let's say, virtual business card online, have a better profile, and to say, okay, in a standard way, this is what we do, this is what we're good at, these certificates we have, this is our experience, and this is what we can offer you. Now, this is exactly where Tenrex sits. So with the logistics community platform concept of Tenrex, we want to enable the carriers to find more business in a digitized and online world. And that means that the typical way of selling is going to disappear. And people need to anticipate on that, because the buyers are already further, because buyers typically, they already have other platforms that do things in a digital way, and they don't have time to see 100 carriers on a yearly basis or even more. Although carriers may think that, and they think, okay, if I can just squeeze myself in somehow, then I have this personal contact and I can build a relationship. But it's not about that anymore, because let's face it, logistics is often a commoditized product. And there is still a lot to gain to actually improve your online presence and your online business card. And that's so important. That's really what Tenrex wants to fuel and wants to grow on a worldwide scale. But obviously, there's definitely going to be a big change in that. And I think that's why we see in general with digitization that people say now, okay, well, we don't need to travel anymore, and actually we can sell online, whether it's a digital product or it's a physical product. And often there's not even any interaction anymore, because the way we buy things, we don't go to stores, we just buy it ourselves online. So you will see the same thing in B2B, and B2B is always behind in that. But eventually it will come. So first you may have the interaction, but at some point there's not even interaction anymore. And it will only happen once you go to the implementation. So people really need to up their digital sales skills. And that's where we want to help them with it, with Tenrex.
Okay. And do you see more shippers that will need to change? Or do you think it will be more the carriers that need to change?
I think often there has to be change on both sides, but I think a lot of carriers, especially smaller ones, they live in a different reality where they have been struggling also to invest in new platforms or in technology, because the margins in the logistics are quite low. Absolutely. So you need to find ways to make that more efficient for them, but also make it accessible for them. And when you look at a platform like ours, it's going to cost between 20, 30, 35 euros to be present there on a monthly basis. Very reasonable pricing to be able to present yourself.
Yeah, that's not an investment.
On the platform.
I mean, that's just that's an expense.
Just a small expense.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that gives the ability for people to say, okay, we don't depend anymore only on our website or on a LinkedIn profile, but we go here to a specialized, let's say, what you mentioned, a LinkedIn for logistics, to be there, to be present, to be found, to find new business opportunities, and to see how we can grow our presence, even though we are a very small carrier from wherever. So you basically level the playing field. You can be a big DHL or a big DSV, but in the online world, you can have on a platform absolutely the same presence, just with different parameters and certificates, equipment types, and so on. But it gives the shippers the ability to find carriers, because even though they like to work with big integrators, big companies, they also like to work with smaller companies, because smaller companies give them the flexibility in certain areas where they need to have that flexibility.
Sounds like a big opportunity for both carriers and shippers.
That's what we hope for sure.
Pieter, if you look at the freight market, what other developments do you see for the near future?
Well, to be honest, it's a very uncertain future when prices are very high for air freight. Prices are very high for ocean freight. Ocean freight is even a scarce resource at the moment, and I believe it will definitely be there. Be that for a certain period of time. Parcel is, of course, very booming. What is very interesting, I find, is that there is a new generation coming into decision-making roles in a lot of companies on the shipper side, which will definitely lean towards digitization. And I would say sustainability obviously is a very important thing. The way things are being transported, there's a lot of initiatives to do that better in a cleaner way. So I think in general, companies will try to do that more efficient, and will also want to work closer with other companies, with their peers, to reduce their footprint. So I would definitely say that sustainability is very important, but we will see a lot of stress still in the market over the coming year and a half, 2 years, because of the prices, because of lack of capacity, and also because a lot of, for example, in Germany, a lot of truck drivers are retiring. So there's a lack of not trucks or companies, but just a lack of truck drivers. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that is going to be captured, and is the market able to attract young people to work on a truck? I highly doubt it. It's something that is not attractive at the moment, and although logistics has been elevated as a very necessary part of business and everyday life, it's not really an attractive job to spend every day on a truck. But that's going to be needed. At the same time, we will also see electric trucks coming on the roads, contributing to the sustainability part. So I think it is a very exciting time for logistics to be in and to be part of change. And I think we will see change everywhere. So definitely budgets will increase with digitization for doing things cleaner. So I think we will see a lot of technological improvements and change coming. So I would definitely recommend people that would be, don't know what to study, for example, go study logistics, or be in a role where you really can make a difference in logistics, because that's going to be possible for sure in the coming 5 years within the logistics industry.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's a good thing that the younger generations are becoming decision makers. They are much more aware of the need to have a better planet, and they also, I mean, they grew up with the technology that is now improving logistics. I think it will be interesting to see what will happen if indeed these younger generations move into these positions. Pieter, I'd like to thank you for being on the show, and I'd like to thank you for your insights. Do you have any parting words for our logistics community?
Martijn, absolutely. Innovate and digitize.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martijn.
Thank you for listening to Does Logistics Matter? For more on trends and innovations, visit our blog at www.logisticsmatter.com. This podcast was produced by Dimitri Vleugel. The music is based on a sample by Ruggerman and produced by Michael Spengler. This episode was supported by Freightender. Freightender is a cloud-based logistics procurement solutions provider, digitizing tender, sales and pricing processes in logistics for shippers and forwarders.